Welcome back. We're discussing healthcare this evening. My guest is Clayton Samsudeen. And if you'd like to email me, my email address is info@anchorcapital.co.za. Email from Sandra and Belita, that one when we've done one of the major considerations. We've dealt with that one. We're now going to go to Peter in Rosettenville. And Peter is asking me, what is the period and timeline for option changes?
Yeah, so option changes are typically between October and November. And I typically advise clients, make your change before the end of November. Although some schemes allow you to go up to 15th December, I think it's a bit late to do that. And then the effective date would be the 1st of January the following year. So just a few things there. Certain medical schemes do allow you to upgrade within 30 days of diagnosis of a dreaded disease. Now that's important. So that means if you're on that specific scheme, you could buy in at the lower level according to your healthcare needs, knowing that you can upgrade, let's say, in the event of diagnosis of cancer within 30 days. So I think that's a great benefit that some medical schemes offer.
Clayton, that's a bit of selection against the medical aid, isn't it?
Not really, because I think the medical scheme is kind of saying, you know what, it's not anti-selective because you've been on the scheme and you're only going to upgrade once you have been diagnosed with a dreaded disease, instead of having this better safe than sorry approach. So I buy the highest option because I fear I may need this particular benefit and I may never be diagnosed with it.
That's the insurance concept.
That's
the
right,
fear. Why do we buy insurance? And a lot of people say to me, you know, what I need life insurance for? And I say, well, do you insure your motor car? You're going to get no return.
Yeah.
But Jack in Parktown says, how does digital drive innovation in the healthcare industry? It's become a very big part.
Absolutely.
How does it drive what you do?
It makes life easier. So I think, you know, if we just use the term fintech, you know, it helps us to deliver whether it's financial planning advice or healthcare analysis or recommendations. It just facilitates the process, makes it a lot easier, a lot more accurate. You know, the engagement, particularly from young, you know, tech-savvy, that particular generation helps a lot. The downside is the older people, those that's on pension. You know, they have challenges with running with an app. You know, it's just very difficult for them to access some benefits via this technology. And so it's still the hand-holding approach that needs to take place. So, you know, as an advisory company, you need to kind of have both. You need to maintain that old style of where the doctor still comes to your home to do a visit, and you still have to do the technology at the same time. But it's a very interesting dynamic. It changes the way we do business.
Clayton, you're too young to remember doctors coming to the home. I remember as a small boy, doctors always came to the home. And then some years later when I was married, I said to the doctor, why don't you come anymore? He said, you know, for me to come, I'm going to come tonight. Rather come to my rooms in the morning. And I can get started on the career. But you talked about the younger people, and James in Garden says, I'm 27 years old, how do I go about choosing a medical aid scheme?
So, look, the first thing is to understand...
So obviously he's healthy.
Yeah, well, if you're healthy, look, okay, let's put it this way, right? So medical schemes, all of them provide, we start off with major medical benefits first. So if you have an unlimited benefit at 100% of the medical scheme rate, you're good to go with gap cover, right? Because gap cover will take you up to 300, 500 or 600%. The next decision is going to be, if you are not a chronic sufferer, then you could do with a scheme that only covers 27. And if you have a condition above 27, well, one that's not of the 27 conditions, then you need to go to a more comprehensive plan. So we start off with what your hospital needs first, what your chronic needs, and then we work on your day-to-day. So someone at that particular age, like we mentioned now, can purchase a smart type of plan. So smart plans are driven by technology, and because of the technology basis, they're paying a lot less in premium. So some of them are at the range of 965 Rand per month for really good cover for young people. And I think that is really, you know, those type of schemes are driving what I was talking about initially, is trying to get cover to those that don't have cover, instead of moving members between schemes. You know, I think that is the way we should be going as an industry.
Clayton, the next question from Brian in Four Ways may be a little bit unfair to ask you, because you're not a doctor, but he says, I'm at a complete loss relating to my case. In 2011, I had esophagus and 2/3 of cancer and 2/3 of my stomach removed due to stage 4 cancer. I was prescribed certain drugs for reflux control for life. It was paid under my Discovery plan under the cancer cover.
Yes.
My medication was changed from 40 milligrams Nexium to 2 times 20 milligrams. The reason for the change that I was choking with the tablet sticking in my throat. Discovery refused to fund the same medication in the smaller doses. Now, let me rather ask you, you can't talk for Discovery, but what you can talk about is what you would have done for this particular individual in the event of him being a client of yours and referring this problem to you.
Right, so with that specific scenario, so certain types of chronic applications for certain conditions require supporting reports. So let's hypothetically say cholesterol. You know, for you to get registered on cholesterol, you need to do a lipogram. Otherwise, they're not going to know exactly what your cholesterol levels are. Now, when we get to the cancer part and what this particular viewer is talking about, is we need, in a case like that, you need to get a scope done. So it's a gastroscopy, and you need to submit that report together with the chronic application, and then it would be considered.
Although they were covering it prior.
Correct.
So now the doctor says, okay, 40 million, look, I know nothing about it, and we're not going to talk about the drug itself, but here's 40, rather take 2 smaller tablets of 20.
Right.
Because maybe you can swallow them a lot easier.
Yes. The missing component is the protocol of application. And that means here's the application, here's the script, but there's no scope. So without the scope, you cannot get that approved. So if you had the scope with the doctor's motivation and the script, I'm sure that Discovery would have reviewed it favorably.
So you would have said to the client,
That's
this
correct,
is what's required.
Correct.
And often, sometimes, you know, when you're dealing with a call center and you're in a, you know, you're in a state anyway, and maybe you're not getting an answer. Then Shirley in Linksfield says, when are the low-cost schemes going to be launched, and is NHI going to have impact on this?
So the low-cost schemes are there. It's called primary healthcare. Unfortunately, and I mentioned in our previous programs, government keeps moving the goalposts. So again, there's an extension till 31 March 2023. But they currently exist. So you can purchase a hospital care program or just your day-to-day benefit. And of course, as we discussed earlier, whether it's a primary healthcare, medical insurance, or medical aid, would not be able to duplicate the benefit that's provided by NHI. So that is the current ruling as we know it to be.
Jevon in Bryanston says, when it comes to elective surgery, does it make sense to ask for a quote prior to being admitted to hospital and then getting information from your medical aid as to what they will pay? If there's a big gap, how do you suggest I fill the gap?
Absolutely, that is such a good question, and it is absolutely correct. So the minute you have a planned procedure, you would get a quotation from your particular surgeon. You'd send that to your advisor or broker. We would typically engage the scheme. They'll tell us what we pay for certain line items. And then if there is a missing part and you have gap cover, we'll be able to say, yes, gap cover will pay this. And if you don't, you'll be able to budget. So budget means you could either negotiate with the provider to rather pay cash and get a reduced rate. But there are mechanisms to try and reduce the out-of-pocket expense, put it that way. You
know, it's quite amazing how the public will negotiate with everyone.
Correct.
But when it comes to doctors, they just take for God and for good, that's what you're going to be paid.
Yeah.
Very reluctant to negotiate. And people do need to know that you need to sometimes, when you know what the difference is going to be and how you're going to fund it, you have no choice but to negotiate. Mike in Beverly Hills says, I'm totally confused about what my medical aid covers when I'm overseas. What does it not cover, and how long does it operate for? And can I be absent for a few periods from South Africa in a year? So let's just talk the few periods. I think what he's saying, 3 months, and then I come back and go again. But let me just ask you, I had a small claim recently when I was overseas. I paid in dollars. I was absolutely shocked.
Yes.
For my wife to visit a doctor, it cost 5,500 rand.
Yeah.
It cost $280 something dollars. How does the medical aid pay for? On what basis do they pay? Do they pay on the bill that I was charged in dollars, or do they convert it to a rand amount that they would have paid for that particular visit?
Yeah, so it gets converted back to rand, and that's what you're going to get reimbursed. So I am your broker, so I'm dealing with your claim at the moment.
No, I'm just interested if people have asked that.
Yeah, so it converts back to rands. And of course, it's
So whatever I paid in dollars
Yes.
will revert back to rand.
Yeah.
So will I get actually paid from my medical aid the actual dollar amount I paid?
Yeah. So, but remember, in your case, you also have gap cover, and that's why I keep saying you need to have one broker support you on both. So, because you have gap cover on your gap cover plan, you have international travel cover too. So, you know, let's just say the one provider, in your case, Discovery, doesn't pay the full amount. There's a balance we can claim from the other, which is your gap cover provider.
Okay, my second part, asking you how often can you be away from South Africa?
You can be away as often as you like, as long as you come back and go again within 90 days.
Okay, then quickly, Johanning Cresta says, please explain when children can no longer be on their parents' medical aid and what happens if they remain after the expiry period and have claims.
So, so look, the most prominent scheme in South Africa, Discovery, don't charge minor dependent rates when the children is older than 21. Then there are some medical schemes that do allow dependents up to 26 years if studying full-time. So they'll still be charged minor dependent rates. So children can remain on as long as they are dependent on the parent. But that's not advisable because we typically find that the parent is on a more comprehensive plan than the healthcare needs of the child. So the child is typically younger and healthier and could be accommodated on a lesser expensive plan and still have access to private health.
That's what a lot of people don't do.
Correct.
Well, whilst there's a big concern of what medical schemes will be allowed to cover, and even more of a worry is where the funds are going to come from, South Africans have already experienced how public and private healthcare can work together, as was evidenced by our tack and approach to COVID. It's early days, and I suggest that no action is taken by members' medical schemes until more information is available. Clayton, thank you for joining me this evening.
Thank you.
It's important to note that our program is to provide information and should not be construed as advice. Next week's program will be focusing on the investment world, and if you need to get hold of me, my details will appear on the screen. I'd like to thank you for watching, and good night.